George Allen knows a thing or two about politics. He spent 4 years as governor of Virginia and served in the U.S. House and Senate. And he knows a thing or two about sports. Back in the early 70s, he was a quarterback for the University of Virginia. And he carries the name of his late father, the NFL Hall of Fame coach who took the Washington Redskins to a Super Bowl berth in 1973. I caught up with Allen at the Redskins training facility to talk about his new book, What Washington Can Learn from the World of Sports. Lessons he says athletes take for granted, but those in political power seem to ignore.
It's everything from the meritocracy of sports, the equal opportunity on a level playing field, and that the players, the coaches, their schemes, their effort determines whether they win or lose, unlike the redistributionist approach of Washington that you would take, say, Steelers Super Bowl trophies, one of them, and give them to the Detroit Lions because they haven't won a Super Bowl. That's not the way it is in sports. You earn success. It's an equal opportunity, not equal results.
That's why one of the chapters in Allen's book is called A Tie is Like Kissing Your Sister. He points specifically to Nebraska coach Tom Osborne's choice in the 1984 Orange Bowl. The Cornhuskers could have won a national championship by simply kicking an extra point and tying the game. Instead, Osborne decided to go for a 2-point conversion and the victory. The play failed and Nebraska lost the game and the title. But Osborne gained the respect of sports fans across the country.
They don't want to have ties. As much as the government would love to think that every player would somehow want to tie at the end of a game, or in the Washington point of view, everyone should be happy to be crossing the finish line holding hands together.
Armchair quarterbacks. Yeah. Talk about that.
Well, armchair quarterbacks, there's a lot of armchair quarterbacks in Washington who think they know better than families, mothers and fathers, how to raise their children, and entrepreneurs how to run their businesses, and think they ought to tell us all sorts of things. As I said earlier, telling us what kind of energy sources we ought to be utilizing, how much income we should have, what kind of health care should be dictated or mandated from Washington.
Allen says government should glean something from the sports principle that fans don't pay to watch officials officiate. They're there, he says, simply to create a level playing field. Likewise, Allen doesn't think the government ought to be in the business of bailing out failing companies. And he adds, when the refs can't be trusted, everyone loses.
No one would ever want a referee making up a rule in the middle of a game. They need to play. The rule may be a tough rule, and I bring that up in examples of sports. Well, there's the rules committee that changed the rules after the season, not in the middle of the game, which means federal judges, if they don't like a law or they think it's an unjust result, they apply the law. They're not to be legislators. Elected representatives of the people are those who make the laws, not unelected judges appointed for life wearing robes.
And drawing another lesson from the gridiron, Allen asks who would ever think of punting the ball on first down.
You never punt on first down. Punting is in football is failure.
But he says that's exactly what Washington has been doing on energy policy, squandering the opportunity to become less dependent on other countries.
Any other country in the world, if they had our resources, they would consider it a blessing. Our government looks at these resources as a curse. We're the Saudi Arabia of the world when it comes to coal, and we ought to creatively and cleanly use it.
People will want to know after reading this book whether Senator Allen is willing to take the principles he's learned over the years and re-enter the game of politics. He's been on the sidelines since 2008, when an off-the-cuff reference during a campaign stop cost him re-election to the Senate.
This fellow here over here with the yellow shirt, Makaka, or whatever his name is.
I very much regret it. I take responsibility for a mistake. Even if it wasn't unintentional, it was a mistake.
But he says even that incident is a reminder of the similarities between politics and sports. Both are rough and tumble and not for the faint of heart.
My father would say, when you win, you're reborn. When you lose, you die a little.
Allen told me he hasn't ruled out running for office again, but right now his focus is on the November elections and helping candidates who adhere to the common-sense conservative principles he writes about in his book. Lee Webb, CBN News.